The revelation yesterday that 40 hardened jihadis have already returned to Australia should galvanise the Parliament this week and ensure the swift passage of new laws to keep potential terrorists out of Australia. You've got to ask, don't you, why this legislation isn't already law? What possible reason is there for allowing these people to return home to Australia when they've already rejected our country and our values when they picked up weapons for Islamic State and slaughtered in the name of Allah? But what MP in this building here tonight would delay on this law? Why would our country want to be a sanctuary for hardened terrorists just because they were once entitled to an Australian passport? The Temporary Exclusion Order Bill should have been passed years ago, as soon as it became obvious that a sizable number of Australians were going into the Middle Eastern war zone to fight for Islamic State and might one day seek to return home. These issues were first canvassed by Cabinet at the top half of 2015. Now, I'm not breaching any confidences here either. Tony Abbott at the time publicly called for a modern form of exile to deal with this modern form of treason way back then. But it wasn't long after this that Abbott was gone and the Turnbull Prime Ministership let these issues, along with many others, just fall away, controlled as he was by a left-leaning leadership group. Now, to his credit, Peter Dutton didn't let up, and when Turnbull went under a bus, temporary exclusion orders were back on the table. I believe these laws should have gone before the Parliament before the last election. But now, at least, 4 years on from that Abbott Cabinet debate, they're back before the Parliament, and if Labor was smart, they would pass them this week and pass them quickly. I say smart because the best thing here for the coalition would be yet another fight, like tax, where the coalition are on the side of the Australian voter, and by their very opposition, Labor send yet another message that they still don't accept the election result from May. Via our security agencies, we know that nearly 250 Australians were thought to have joined Islamic State and other terror groups in the Middle East since late 2013. About 100 of these terrorists are thought to have been killed. Not enough, in my view, but I'm pretty hardline here. I've seen far too many videos, classified videos, showing who they murdered and how. Now, as detailed in the media yesterday, about 40 of these terrorists have already come back to Australia, which leaves about 80 still overseas and potentially on their way back here unless these new laws are passed without further stuffing around. Most of our homegrown jihadis don't have dual nationality, so they can't be kept out by stripping them of citizenship. Most of them can't be successfully prosecuted and locked up either because the evidence against them, even if we're able to get it out of the war zone, that is Syria, would be inadmissible in an Australian court, or at the very least, struggle to meet our evidentiary burden. Keeping all of these 100 plus jihadists under 24-hour surveillance would be prohibitively expensive and, I have to say, logistically almost impossible. We simply don't have enough trained operatives in this country to do that, as well as cover off all the other national security challenges that our agencies deal with day in, day out. The only way to keep Australians safe from those who have left our country to fight against us and our way of life is not to let them back, to keep them out until we are convinced they pose no further threat. The draft bill has already changed to accommodate concerns that it was too tough. Every ministerial temporary exclusion order will now have to be reviewed by a judge or magistrate who will have to be satisfied that the minister had reasonable grounds for excluding someone. Now, what could be fairer than that? I tell you, it's a hell of a lot fairer than the justice these animals meted out to their blindfolded captives, sword in hand. For anyone naive enough to think that the risk is not real, here's a statistic that should stop you in your tracks. Of the 25 Australians thought to have trained with the Taliban 2 decades ago and who later returned here to Australia, just on half was subsequently involved in terror plots. We managed just to keep a close watch on those 25. Try 100 plus. And therein lies the problem. Now, it's long past time that our politicians just get on with this law. Any further procrastination by Labor and the Greens and the crossbench in the Senate won't be evidence of some commendable human rights concerns. Instead, it'll be further evidence of the hand-wringing left putting the interests of terrorists ahead of the safety of Australians. I have to say tonight, it really is that clear-cut.